So, in another twist for the Warner Brother Discovery sale, Netflix is now out, apparently entirely, from buying the company, and Paramount has stepped in, has swooped in with what Warner Brothers has referred to as a superior deal, offering $111 billion for the entire company. Netflix, in comparison, was only offering $83 billion for simply HBO Max and Warner Brother Film Studios. This is a absolutely mammoth of a deal. $111 billion for an industry that is shrinking and is getting smaller by the day, that is experiencing constant cuts and layoffs, and does not know the direction and the future landscape that is going to exist for the industry in 10 years' time. This is a mammoth deal that relies heavily on the catalogue and the subsidiaries of Warner Brothers, the entirety of the DC universe, the entirety of Harry Potter, Looney Tunes, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Hanna-Barbera, all being subsumed by Paramount and is going to become one company. But let's get into what has actually gone down over the past 24 hours. There is a lot to kind of go over. There is a lot of maneuvering factors. Not all of them possibly are relevant, but I'm going to try and bring up as many of them as possible. Starting off, Netflix had about 4 days to match the Paramount offer, but they quickly declined, with Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters citing the belief as a nice get rather than a must-have. They have said that Warner Brothers is still a world-class organization and that they believe that the deal would have preserved and created more production jobs in the US than the Paramount deal. They still regard Netflix's business as being healthy, strong, and growing organically, powered by the Slate and best-in-class streaming service. I will offer some pushback here. I will say that I think that it's not necessarily a must-have for Netflix, but getting Warner Brothers would have meant that Netflix, even more than it already is a must-have streaming service. You want to watch Batman, you have to have Netflix. You want to watch Harry Potter, you have to have Netflix. You want to watch Lord of the Rings, you have to have Netflix. And I understand that these companies already have licensing agreements with Netflix. Harry Potter, DC, Batman, etc., have all had time and places on Netflix, but to permanently have them would mean that Netflix, even more so, would be a permanent fixture in any household. It wouldn't necessarily have created a monopoly, as the Justice Department and the Trump administration are apparently alleging, but I think that it comes pretty damn close. They would have direct control over Warner Brothers, direct control over their own stuff, and then licensing agreements with so many of the Hollywood industry. It would be basically operating as a monopoly because it would have so much power as a mainstay in so many households that other companies would have to interact with them. There would simply be no way to get out of interacting with them. I will say that Netflix, even losing this deal, still comes out in an incredibly healthy position. In the past 24 hours, the Netflix stock is still up by 10%. They are still going to be paid a termination fee of nearly $3 billion by Paramount. And ultimately, this is a deal that basically was a win-win for Netflix. There was no position in which they could come out of this and have lost in the eyes of their executives. As much as we all may hate Netflix for the business decisions that they make, the destruction of cinema, they are incredibly smart businessmen and businesswomen, and so much of the hate that is directed at them is not because they are bad at their jobs. It is not because they are bad at shepherding the company. It is because they are good at these things. Yet they are the antithesis of what so many of us want for the industry going forward. It is in that sense that they almost operate as the villain that you love to hate. They are a necessary evil to almost know where so many cinephiles don't want the industry to go, to net nearly $3 billion and a stock increase of 10%. Well done to them in ways that I hate to admit. In some sense, I always believed that the Netflix deal was kind of doomed. Even if Paramount subsided and admitted defeat, I never believed that it was going to clear market regulators because the Trump administration is so heavy-handed on almost being against Netflix and being in favor of Paramount. And therefore, if Paramount can't win, then at the very least, what the Trump administration and Paramount can orchestrate is that Netflix loses. I'm still not confident that Paramount actually succeeds in the merger. I think that there's a lot of hurdles that they're going to have to go through. I think that the California regulators are a major obstacle. There is so much going on around Netflix that it seemed almost inevitable to me that Netflix wasn't going to succeed in this. If we come on to the actual issues that the merger might encounter, I think that the main issues they're going to have is not the federal government in the US, nor is it going to be consumer lawsuits, because those tend to not really go anywhere, and if they do, it's usually settled out of court. I think what the main issues will be is the California state regulator, along with European and UK regulators. Europe, particularly the EU, is very anti-monopoly. I think California has a vested interest in making sure that this merger doesn't happen because of the mass layoffs that are possible if it does go through. Warner Brothers apparently employs around 10,000 people. There is going to be significant overlay between those two sets of employees because they are both studios. What I would suggest is that in the upscaling of Paramount to take over another company, what you would assume is that at least some of those employees from Warner Brothers will have to stay on because it will be necessary to shepherd Warner Brothers into the merger, and therefore there will be a natural increase. What I doubt is that you are going to see a mass layoff of, say, all 10,000 people. I think it is more likely that probably about half of those people will go. That's not a good thing by any means, and I think that California, there is going to be significant pushback headed by the local state officials, as well as the guilds and unions. There is going to be a lot of pushback and questions over what happens to groups such as staff writers, such as TV directors. Are their roles going to become fewer and scarcer, and are Paramount going to seek to employ more in-house directors that they have a lot of relationships with already? And given that California tends to be more left-wing but also tries to please the studios, I think that the chances are is that there will be major concessions by Paramount, and that there will probably have to be some protections in place in order to escape the ire of the California state regulators. I'm not sure what happens in Europe. I think that there is a good chance that the European Union might block this. I think that there is also a chance that the UK regulators might block this. There is a lot of jobs in the UK right now that are employed by studios. I think that if the UK even sniffs that a lot of those jobs are heading back to the US or are going to be cut en masse, I think that they will seek, again, either major concessions from Paramount, or they will seek to upend this merger in its entirety. Coming on to my final thoughts, I know that it sounds harsh and it sounds really horrible to say. For me, this was the preferred outcome. If the outcome that Warner Brothers stays independent and doesn't get taken over was off the table, this was my preferred outcome, purely because I think that the industry is downsizing anyways, and that I think that even if Warner Brothers stayed independent, a lot of those jobs would probably be laid off and not open up anyways, because that is what the industry is going through. And therefore, I think that the next best option is to prioritize the art form and the protection of the art form, which we know Netflix doesn't care about. And as much as they say they do, as much as they say that Warner Bros. Would remain the same, I simply don't believe them. And I think that the likelihood is that in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, they would seek as much as possible to eliminate the Warner Brothers slate from cinematic and theatrical releases. And so therefore, the preferred outcome for me was this outcome. There is also the reality of AI. I don't know what Paramount's situation is with AI, but we know that Netflix is pretty much all in on AI and regards it as a tool that they can just use basically willy-nilly. I also will mention that I think Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca at Warner Brothers have been excellent studio heads, and I am really interested by the idea of their role within Paramount and Warner Brothers post-merger. I personally would like to see them elevated and to essentially take over Paramount Film Studios and Warner Brothers Studios. I'm assuming they're going to merge all that together and essentially just create one mammoth studio. If that is the case, I think you have to look back at Paramount's 2025 slate, which was not very good, and then look at Warner Brothers' 2025 slate, which in my opinion was far superior. Let's compare them right now. Paramount's slate was Heart Eyes, Novocaine, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Friendship, Smurfs, The Naked Gun, The Mortimers, Vicious, Roofman, Regretting You, The Running Man, The SpongeBob Movie. So in total, I think that the financial successes, or even just critically acclaimed successes, probably number in the single digits. You've got Heart Eyes, Novocaine, Friendship, The Naked Gun, Roofman, maybe, Regretting You, and The SpongeBob Movie. What's that, 8 or 9? That's not a very successful slate whatsoever. There's also some flops in this list that are major and were massive money sinks and time sinks that have not been shepherded and protected very well whatsoever. So Mission Impossible and Smurfs, for example, should have done better, significantly better than they did, especially that Mission Impossible film, and both, in my opinion, were pretty bad failures, I would say. On the other hand, the Warner Brothers slate was Companion, Mickey 17, Parenting, The Alto Knights, A Working Man, A Minecraft Movie, Sinners, The Accountant 2, Final Destination Bloodlines, F1, Superman, Weapons, Conjuring Last Ride, One Battle After Another, Family McMullen. A really, really strong list. There's been some flops in there. There's been some questionable decisions over maybe movie rights. You know, something like The Alto Knights is terrible. Overall, this is a really, really successful slate. And I would like to see Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca empowered, and I would like to see them given more power at Paramount, and I would like to see them shepherd Paramount into a new era of success, and I would like to see them grow Paramount into an actual respectable Hollywood studio that they have not been for quite a while, if it is not for the success of Taylor Sheridan TV shows and the Mission Impossible franchise. This could be a new era of Paramount. It could also go pretty terribly. David Ellison has struggled mightily to get this deal over the line in the first place, and it now has to be shepherded correctly in the new era. That means that you can't have blowout budgets for the likes of Mission Impossible. It also means that you have to prioritize a lot of the Warner Brothers IP. That means Batman, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. That means that those within Paramount probably have to be willing to take a backseat creatively in a lot of senses and allow those within Warner Brothers to take the reins. I will also say that I cannot wait to see the back of David Zaslav. My assumption is that he's going to retire. If not, he deserves to be fired. He's terrible. Get rid of that guy. And that is where I will end this video. I wouldn't say I'm happy with this. I think that this is the necessary evil. I think both options were bad. My hope is that this will still, in some sense, get stopped and that Warner Brothers will just remain independent. But then I don't really know where we go from there, because that means that David Zaslav clearly doesn't have interest in being CEO of this company anymore. Who comes in? That's a major question. I'm not really sure, but I will leave this there. Thank you for watching. Bye.